When Willie Nelson talks about death now, there is no fear in his voice, no panic, no denial, no performance. But that kind of calm does not come from old age alone. It comes from surviving a life that would have destroyed most people long before they ever got old. He was abandoned as a child, crushed by failure, devastated by the death of his son, hunted by the IRS, weakened by illness, and left standing while the legends around him vanished one by one. So by the time Willie Nelson reached 92, death was no longer the most frightening thing he had faced. Life was. The public has spent decades seeing Willie as something almost untouchable, the outlaw with the braids, the songwriter with the weathered smile, the man who could make pain sound easy. But that image hides something darker. Willie Nelson did not glide through life on charm and talent. He endured it. And the reason his words about mortality feel so sharp now is because they come from someone who has already been forced to live through loss in almost every form it can take. His story did not begin with fame. It began with being left behind. Willie Hugh Nelson was born on April the 29th, 1933, in Abbott, Texas, during the Great Depression. It was a hard place, in a hard time, the kind of world where comfort was fragile and survival often mattered more than tenderness. His parents, Merle and Ira Nelson, had ambitions that stretched beyond their small-town life, and when they chose to leave, Willie and his sister Bobby were the ones who paid the price. He was only 6 years old when his mother walked away. His father moved on too, building another life elsewhere. For Willie, abandonment was not some distant childhood sadness. It became one of the first truths he ever learned. The people who are supposed to stay can leave anyway. His grandparents stepped in and raised him, and they gave him the things that would shape him forever: discipline, faith, and music. At 6, he got his first guitar. At 7, he was already writing songs. By 10, he was playing with his first band. Music became more than a hobby. It became the one place where the hurt could go. On stage, he found something missing from the rest of his life: attention, acceptance, a sense that he mattered. For a boy carrying quiet questions about why his own parents had left, that kind of belonging meant everything. But music did not spare him from hardship. During brutal Texas summers, Willie worked the cotton fields alongside migrant laborers, doing punishing work under crushing heat. His hands bled. His body learned fatigue early. Childhood, for Willie, was not soft or protected. It was a training ground. The labor was harsh, but it taught him something that would define the rest of his life. Pain could be endured. You could be exhausted, wounded, and angry at the world and still keep moving. That lesson would become one of the foundations of the man he later became. When adulthood arrived, it did not reward him immediately. By the early 1960s, Willie had a wife, Martha Matthews, and a growing family. They had children, responsibilities, bills, and a dream that seemed always just one step away from becoming real. Willie was in Nashville, writing songs that other people would turn into hits, but his own life was still unstable. He sold encyclopedias door to door. He pumped gas. He took whatever jobs he could find. The world could see his talent, but talent was not enough to make life easier at home. While his songs brought emotion to strangers, his own household was filling with strain. The marriage began to crack under the weight of disappointment. Money was tight. Opportunities kept slipping away. The fights grew sharper, uglier, and more frequent. What had once looked like a hopeful life started to feel like a trap. Willie came home not as a conquering artist, but as a man carrying rejection after rejection, and the pressure hollowed him out. At his lowest point, overwhelmed by alcohol, failure, and emotional collapse, he stumbled into the freezing Nashville streets and lay down in the road, hoping a car would end it. It was one of the bleakest moments of his life. Not a dramatic legend polished for retelling, but real despair. Cars swerved around him. None stopped his pain. And when he got up again, he had already looked into a darkness many people never admit they have touched. He survived that chapter, and eventually the career he had fought for finally rose. But success did not protect him from what came next. The deepest wound of Willie Nelson's life arrived on Christmas Day in 1991. His son Billy died at just 33 years old after years of struggling under pain that those around him could not fully remove. That Christmas should have been a day of family, music, and celebration. Instead, it became a day that haunted Willie forever. Billy had been carrying the burden of expectations, inner darkness, and emotional suffering for years. There had even been plans for him and Willie to record a gospel album together. For a moment, it may have seemed like music could once again become a bridge, but Billy had already made his choice. For Willie, this was not simply grief. It was devastation of another order. He later admitted that losing his son was the low point that made everything else seem to pale by comparison. That tells you how deep the wound really was. Before Billy's death, Willie had already known abandonment, poverty, failure, and emotional collapse. After Billy's death, all of those things seemed smaller. That is what losing a child can do. It does not just hurt. It rearranges the entire meaning of pain. Willie and his sister Bobby did not process it in public speeches or neat lessons. They carried it quietly. They understood each other in silence. Some losses do not become stories you tell. They become shadows that never quite leave the room. As Willie was still living with that grief, another disaster was building behind the scenes. In 1990, the IRS hit him with a staggering tax bill, $32 million in unpaid taxes. It was one of the largest such claims in American history, and it was tied to disastrous financial decisions made by the advisors handling his business affairs. The government did not care that Willie Nelson was beloved. It came for everything. His gold records, his piano, his ranch in Texas, his personal belongings. The symbols of a lifetime of work were stripped away piece by piece. It was not only a financial catastrophe, it was a public humiliation. A national icon was being treated like a criminal by the same system that had profited from his success. Most people would have taken the escape route. Bankruptcy was the obvious option, and many around him urged him to do it. Willie refused. He said he would not use a path that left the people he owed unpaid. Instead, he took the harder road. He recorded the IRS tapes, "Who Will Buy My Memories?" and turned the proceeds over to the government. He auctioned off his belongings. He toured relentlessly, taking gigs, working constantly, and paying down the debt piece by piece. It was exhausting, humiliating, and relentless. But it also revealed something vital about Willie's character. Beneath the laid-back image was a man with a fierce code. He was willing to lose almost everything material. He was not willing to lose his sense of personal honor. That ordeal changed the way he looked at wealth forever. When you have already seen houses, trophies, and possessions disappear, you stop confusing them with the core of your life. Willie learned that what could be seized was never the most important part of him. The ranch could go, the records could go, the money could go, But the music remained. The stage remained. The ability to reach people with a song remained. By 1993, he had paid the debt through sheer stubbornness and work, but the lesson stayed with him. Everything external can vanish fast. What lasts is much harder to take. And even after being broken personally and financially, Willie kept refusing to become small or safe. While many country artists protected their popularity by avoiding controversy, Willie kept speaking his mind. He stood with Charlie Pride at a time when racial tensions still ran deep and country music was hardly a welcoming space for public defiance. He supported black artists. He took political positions that alienated parts of his audience. He endorsed liberal candidates, spoke against war, and became one of the most visible advocates for marijuana legalization, long before mainstream culture softened toward it. He was arrested, criticized, and mocked, but he did not retreat. He even recorded songs that challenged the macho image of country culture, including one about gay cowboys, and later released Vote Them Out, a song that triggered outrage across political lines. This matters because it shows that Willie did not only survive the losses forced on him, sometimes he willingly accepted new losses rather than betray what he believed. He knew public honesty could cost him fans, radio support, and comfort, and he chose it anyway. That is not recklessness. It is a kind of emotional independence forged through years of hardship. A man who has already lost family, money, and peace is much less likely to sell his soul for approval. Willie understood that popularity is cheap if you have to become fake to keep it. Then, as if life had not taken enough already, it came for his body. For a singer, lungs are not just organs. They are livelihood. They are identity. And Willie's lungs became one of the great battlefields of his later life. In 1981, during a family trip to Maui, his left lung collapsed while he was swimming. That was only the beginning. Years of cigarette smoking and marijuana use, combined with age and wear, helped lead to emphysema and repeated bouts of pneumonia. Breathing became a struggle. Stamina faded. His voice and strength were no longer guaranteed. For a man whose entire life had depended on breath, breath to sing, breath to perform, breath to keep moving, this was a cruel kind of betrayal. By 2015, his condition had worsened enough that he underwent stem cell treatment, hoping to repair some of the damage. Tours had to be cancelled. Recovery was uncertain. Then, in 2022, COVID hit him while he was already near 90 and already vulnerable. For Willie, that was not a routine illness. It was a potentially fatal assault on lungs that had already been through far too much. His wife, Annie D'Angelo, threw everything at it: medication, treatments, medical support, close monitoring, and for days his life hung in the balance. Willie had already survived emotional collapse, grief, public ruin, and chronic illness. Now, he was fighting for breath itself. When he pulled through, it left him with an even clearer understanding of mortality. Death was no longer theoretical. He had felt it in the chest, in the weakness, in the terrifying fragility of the next breath. Then there was the loneliness of outliving his own era. The Highwaymen were more than famous musicians. They were a legendary brotherhood, and after losing Jennings, Cash, and then Christopherson, Willie was left carrying the memory of that vanished era alone. Being the last one alive is not a victory, but a heavy burden, and it helped shape Willie's calm acceptance of death. After so much loss, grief, illness, and change, he no longer sees death as shocking, but as the natural end of a life that taught him nothing lasts forever. His honesty does not come from despair, but from clarity. He has lost enough to stop clinging, and what remains in him now is not fear or illusion, but truth.